Hey, Lead Up listeners, Mike Harbour, another great episode of the Lead Up podcast. Really excited. We have a kind of a different voice today, a different message, but it's going to be helpful and beneficial for you. And if you're leading people, it's going to be highly beneficial for you to think outside the box, give your employees some resources they may not normally have or think about in the world of leadership or even retirement. I've got Derek Coburn on the podcast with me today. Derek is a author of a book called Let's Retire Retirement. I'm all about that message. I don't believe in that word myself. He's also written a book called Networking is Not Working. He's the founder of a group called Cadre, which I'm going to let him tell us more about that. I don't want to try to chop that up, but Cadre, he's over in Virginia. Derek, welcome to the Lead Up podcast.
Mike, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited you said yes. I met Derek, just for my listeners. We have a common friend in Paul Gustafson. Paul and I are co-founders of a community called the Lead Bulletproof Community. Derek, we take leaders out to Colorado and do a leadership retreat. It's just it's a faith and leadership retreat. All men, we go to the mountains in Colorado, have a little fun out there and talk about leadership and faith and how we can do that better. Paul's talked about you a lot. I met Derek on one of our community calls where he came in and talked about this message of let's retire retirement. And it was intriguing. It was different, something I'd not really thought about or heard before. And we're going to dive into that a little bit today on the podcast. But Derek, first question for you is, what is retirement in the traditional sense? Let's talk about that first before we really dive into your message.
Yeah, and one thing, I appreciate the great introduction, and one thing that I'll add to that is I've been a financial advisor for 27 years. I sold my wealth management practice in 2019, and I add that because I think it adds a little bit more to the credibility that I have to be having this conversation and why I might be qualified to be sharing what I'm going to share today. So quickly after I started my career as a financial advisor, I immediately began to question the validity of this idea of retirement. I saw a lot of people who were sacrificing their health, their happiness, their relationships in the short term in the name of saving up enough money so that they could one day stop working and then enjoy those things. And when they got there, they didn't have the relationships with their friends and family they were hoping to have. They didn't have the health to enjoy the activities that they wanted to do. And to make matters worse, a lot of the people that got there, even the ones that had enough money, were looking around realizing this is not what was advertised. This is not as great as I was told it was going to be. And a lot of them are going back to work. Over 20% of Americans right now over the age of 65 are working. And in most cases, it's not because they need the money. It's because they missed the connection and they missed the contribution.
Yeah, I love that. I just spoke at a men's conference last night, and one of my messages to men that I speak about, is this whole idea of not, we've done it for too long, right? We sacrifice our families and our relationships with our spouse and our kids to work hard, make as much money, have all the things that we want to have potentially, and then we wake up one day and we got no one to share it with, right? Or we've sacrificed our health in those regards as well. But talk to me a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, Let's Retire Retirement. I know going a little bit deeper from what you just shared.
Yeah, so I started writing the book in 2017, and I started writing it primarily thinking it would be a way for me to attract more of my ideal client. And my ideal client were more of the high net worth crowd. It was at least $3-4 million of investable assets, and I started writing the book, and then I got approached by a private equity company to buy my practice, and sold the practice and came into some money that put me in a spot where I'm not really looking to add clients and grow that business. And I got really clean, man. I was dealing with a lot. My father got dementia in 2013. He had it for 9 years, passed away in 2022. COVID happened. I had a full-blown midlife crisis, and I got real quiet and still, gave up some of the coping mechanisms that I had been using to sort of keep the train going, if you will, whether it was nicotine or some wine at night. God sort of came to me and just said, I want you to get back to this book, except now you get to write a book that's going to potentially help a lot more people than the original intended audience. I can write a book that will hopefully, be valuable to people regardless of what they're making or what role they have or what they've done with their money up until this point.
Yeah, that's good. So let's start helping our listeners a little bit. You write about a story, the tale of two Tonys, in your book, and how working just 10 years longer could reduce that required savings. I'll let you tell the story, but let's use that story to help the people that are listening, and then also, maybe a follow-up question to that is, a lot of our listeners, as I said in the green room before we got started, Derek, are leaders of people, right? So what's the message to those leaders in this story where they can help inspire their employees to think differently about retirement as well?
Yeah, there are a lot of people right now who are feeling anxious, stressed, run down, in large part because they feel like they need to save a certain amount of money by a certain age because they've opted into this concept of retirement. So I created this story called A Tale of Two Tonys to highlight just how much more money and time people may actually have than they realize once they begin to understand there's a good chance they're going to work longer than what they were thinking. Now, if you have a job that you hate, that you can't stand, that's sucking your soul, I don't want you to do it any longer than you have to. But as long as you're in a job that, you enjoy the work somewhat, you enjoy the people you do it with, ideally you love it, then I think you're probably going to want to do it longer than maybe what society is telling you. So Tony's 45 years old. He makes $150,000 a year and he has $150,000 saved up for retirement. And he meets with his advisor and they start talking about what age he wants to retire. And like most people, they haven't given it a lot of thought. They read an article or they have friends or colleagues that have said, oh, I want to retire at 65. Or the financial advisor will often just say, well, why don't we just pick this number because this is the age that most people select. And so Tony says, let's do it. I'll retire at 65. He comes back a week later to review the plan, and the advisor tells him he has to save $2,400 a month, adjusted for inflation, every single month for the next 20 years in order to stop working. If you do the math, it's about 20% of what he's making, and saving 20% of what you're making is a non-starter for most people. But Tony gets this information. He realizes he probably doesn't have as much time to go to the gym or take his wife out on dates or go on the family vacations that they had been going on because he's already behind the curve and he needs to catch up. So I create this alternate reality where Tony's wife, in between these first two meetings here, says, Tony, are you sure you want to retire at 65? I mean, you like what you do. You like the people you do it with. And even if you're not going to do this, you have so many other skills and hobbies and interests. I can't imagine you're going to sit around for 30 years and not do anything at all. And he says, you know what, you're right. So he calls the financial advisor back up and he says, let's make my retirement age 75 instead of 65. And by doing that, the amount Tony needed to save, $2,400 at 65 to retire at 65, goes down to $110 if he wants to work till he's 75. It goes down by 96%. And even if Tony were to say, I'll work an extra 5 years, I think I'll work until I'm 70 instead of 65, the amount goes down to $600 a month, which is a 75% reduction. You can hopefully feel the collective sigh of relief that people feel when they begin to process this information. And the reason why this somewhat funny math works and it's actually real is because in the first scenario, Tony has 10 less years of working, 10 less years of that money growing, and he needs an amount of money that's going to last for 30 years. I have him dying at 95 in both scenarios. In the second example, he has 10 extra years of working, 10 extra years of saving and letting that money compound, and then he only needs an amount of money that will last for 20 years. And we've all seen these articles how we should have saved more when we were 22 years old to take advantage of compounding interest. And if you're anything like me, you feel kind of silly for not doing more of that. But also, hopefully, you're at a place now where you're doing a little bit better than you were at 22. We just don't see any articles of people saying you can get the same benefits of compounding interest, except, by magnitudes more by just letting it sit in there for a lot longer.
Yeah, it's great advice. And when I heard you talk about this the first time I met you, it was almost like I had this weight lifted off of my shoulders, right? Because I'm 55, Derek. I don't ever plan to really retire. I'm sure I'll slow down in the work that I do, but I love what I do. And as long as I can do it, I'm healthy. I'm going to keep doing it. But I also haven't been a good money manager in my life, right? I've made a lot of money in my life, but I've also, well, probably wasted a lot of money. So I'm by the world standards, I'm way behind when it comes to being able to retire, right? And I was like, wow, he just kind of freed me up. Now I still gotta do what I've been doing the last few years, and I need to get started, but I maybe not have to do it as much based on your math. Now, I'm not a good mathematician, so I'll just have to trust your math on that, that I could, save a little bit less. But I
You can
hope
trust me.
yeah, I do trust you. 'Cause you've been doing it for a long time.
I will say though, there's a lot of advisors, a lot of other financial advisors out there, right? Like where even they hear what I have to say, and even if they think it makes sense, you can reverse engineer the math on what I just shared and understand why a lot of financial advisors and a lot of financial institutions might not want to jump on board with promoting this sort of thing. Like if I mean, I cost myself several $1 million when I sold my practice because for the 20 years leading up to that, I was having the same conversation with all of my clients that I was having with Tony in this example. And essentially, you don't need to give me $2,400 a month. You only have to give me $110 a month, and you get paid as an advisor typically based on assets under management. And so it really goes against the financial interests of financial advisors and financial institutions to be encouraging or at least letting you realize there's an option for you to work longer than maybe what the industry is telling you.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly impacts the advisor's pocketbook to give this advice, right? I but the reality is, something that just strikes me is even if you retire and you've got that money, but you've worked yourself to death, you haven't really taken care of your health, and certainly the relationships, you get to that place, maybe you have all this money, but you either have no one to spend it with or you don't have the health to really want it to be able to do the things that you wanted to do, right? When you retire,
Yep.
this dream that you had. So there's a lot of, I just think there's a great advice in what you give. Talk to me just a minute about the time machine effect and this experiment in your own life, because when I hear I can save $2,400 a month or I can save $100 a month and I get basically the same return, I was like, wow, that doesn't seem possible. But so let's just go a little bit deeper in that to um, you know have somebody like me who's maybe a doubting Thomas, so to speak, get more comfortable with that idea.
Yeah, well, even if I can't convince you on the money side of things, what I really am trying to do here is I feel like I'm in the regret minimization game right now. And so for me, I have two boys, 16 and 13. I have 2.5 and 5.5 years left, 2.5 and 4.5 years left, respectively, with them before they likely go off to college. And there was a blog post about 10 years ago from Tim Urban on his site, Wait But Why. And he just calculated, he's like, look, you can, if you kind of base your life expectancy off of where it is for most people, you know how many days you've been alive, how many more you have left. We can figure out how much time we have left with certain people or doing certain activities. And he said, you have a kid that goes off to college. When they leave, you've already spent 93% of the time that you're going to spend with them over the course of your life,
Mm.
which is just incredibly sad for me and for other people to hear and to think about. The reverse, if you sort of flip this around, that's 7% left with your parents once you leave. If you've got parents now that are in a different state and you see them 2 times a year and they're 75 years old, you might be able to figure out how many more times you have with them. And I'm not sharing this because I want to make you feel sad or guilty. I'm sharing this because maybe by putting it front and center, you'll find more opportunities to spend time with them, or you'll be more present for the times that you are with them. And so when my boys were 10 and 7, my wife and I had this nighttime routine where we would alternate laying in bed with them, tucking them in bed, snuggling with them, waiting for them to fall asleep. And I started having thoughts on a lot of nights like, gosh, I wish my boy would hurry up and fall asleep so I can go watch this show with my wife, or I can respond to this email. And then I started feeling bad because I'm like, he's 10. He's not going to want to do this with me for that much longer. I better appreciate it. I'm going to miss this when it's gone. And I had this crazy thought. It was, if a company 30 years from now invented a time machine and they were going to offer me the opportunity to go back in time to have one more night with the 10-year-old version of my kid where I get to read him a story, I get to lay with him, I get to snuggle with him and wait for him to fall asleep, how much money would I pay for that? And for me, it was like, I'll write a check for $50,000. The 65-year-old version of me has enough money to write a check for $50,000 without even thinking twice. And even though we are not having those snuggles anymore, I work out with my 16-year-old. We have a gym in the house. 3 times a week, we're working out together. I've got a lot of time in the car with my youngest kid who between soccer practice and soccer games. And we're going to just miss all this when we're gone. And I want people to realize that there's probably a lot of $50,000 moments happening in their life right now, whether it's with their kids or their spouse or their friends or enjoying certain activities. Experiences that they would pay a lot of money to relive in the future that they're not really taking advantage of right now.
Yeah, that's so good, man. I'm 55. My son is 20, he'll be 25 here in a few weeks after we record this. And I can, my wife and I sacrificed a lot. She was a stay-at-home mom. She took care of both of my kids, and I wasn't making as much money then as I am now, but we did okay. We had a lot of fun. We had some experiences. We built great relationships with our kids. I mean, at 25 and 20, we have great relationships. My son works with me now. He's a partner in my business. We do a lot together. He was at that men's event I was at last night.
Oh, nice.
He's a part of, the retreat that we do out in Colorado. We have great relationship, and I chalk that up to all the things I did that you just described when they were younger, right? Just spending time with them and making that relationship more important than making money. I like to make money, and I want to make more of it, right? I'm pretty good at making it, but those relationships then, that was investing in our future. And we have, I think we have great relationships now. Not everybody can do that. I've been self-employed, since 2006, so not everyone can do that. But I think we have to find ways to do that as well. We might dig into that in just a little bit more.
I'll add real quick. Warren Buffett, it was just announced, he just retired, that he generated 95% of his net worth after the age of 65. And I just think that if somebody wants to stop at 65, they're going to be leaving a lot of money, but they're also going to be leaving a lot of wisdom on the table. This is not a story of a remarkable generational investor. This is a story of somebody that just kept going and let his money grow. His replacement coming in to take over Berkshire Hathaway is 62 years old. Right below the age of 62, he's getting his dream job, and he's going to start kind of going forward from here. So what I'm hopefully giving people permission to consider like hitting the pause button, to consider finding a way to sort of pivot into something that might be better suited for them if where they're at now isn't the right fit. Spending more time with their family, with their friends, with the people that they care about now, as long as it's not going to be a job that sucks your soul. When I first started writing the book, I used a lot of language like find a job you love. And I backed off that because I think that it can be harmful in a lot of cases to feel like you have to find a job or a career that is your passion. That doesn't happen for everybody. For some people, their passion is, planning the amazing family vacations every single year, or doing the annual trip with your buddies, or, and having a job that you enjoy, that isn't draining to you or your energy. You like the people that you do it with. I just don't think that many people are going to be happy sitting on their front porch drinking lemonade for 30 years, not doing anything at all.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't, for sure. And I love that. I love that advice as well. I think that's important. Let's talk about some changes that someone would have to make if they decided to work longer. And one of those changes, I think, would be maybe the discussion they have to have with the people closest to them, maybe their family, but especially their financial advisor, right? Because that financial advisor is going to give them the advice of, no, we got to put as much money away so we can retire at 65, whatever. So talk about that a little bit.
Are you talking about potentially the different ways people could, like case studies for different ways people could either continue doing what they're doing now, pivot to something else? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, either of that, just changes an individual might have to make in order to make their financial plan work in the future. Maybe, I'm going to work longer instead of, retire at 62 or 65, whatever advice you would give in that realm.
Yeah. So I think that I've got different case studies that I highlight in the book, and it can be anywhere from you love what you do now, but you want to slow down at some point. And if you slow down at some point and you're not grinding all the time, you're going to be much more likely to want to continue doing it. So maybe you have your own business or your own practice right now, and you're working 50 hours a week, and you want to get to a point where you're doing 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week, or maybe you want to take weekends off or summers off, or you want to stop every day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If you have skills and wisdom that you can bring to the table, a lot of companies, a lot of clients are going to be willing to take you however they can get you. I had a lot of clients and know of a lot of people that had corporate jobs, and they ended up starting consulting gigs when they quote unquote retired from their corporate jobs. They leveraged the relationships that they had formed over the years and the contacts and the ins and outs of the industry that they were able to chime in. I've got one, a friend of mine right now, a client of mine who does this sort of work, and he'll say, I'm gonna do this. You can hire me now. And then in April, I'm going to take another 6 months off. I'm not going to be available to do anything. And then he'll come back in the game and dip his toe in. And I think that there's going to be a lot of flexibility. There's not as many younger workers coming up to take the place of the jobs of the older workers. And so I think that there are going to be a lot of places that are going to be incredibly flexible with the work arrangement that they are willing to endure if they can get access to somebody who's going to really add value for them.
Yeah, that's good. I want to talk about the leaders of businesses right now, leaders of corporations. As we discussed, my work is primarily with a corporation that has, 100, 200, 1,500, 2,000 employees. How would they begin to shift some of the thinking with their employees and using some of your ideas, some financial planning ideas as a service to add value to their employees to think differently about this idea of retirement as well?
I certainly, I'm a big believer. My pastor, Mark Batterson, I heard him say it first probably 10 years ago. He said, he was talking about parents and kids primarily, but he was saying that the best ideas are caught, not taught. People want to see you doing this. And I think something like over 40% of employees in America are leaving vacation hours on the table every single year. So if you're a leader of a company and you're sending emails at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and you're not taking vacations, and you're not going out on dates, and you're not leaving early to go to your kid's game, then you're sending a message to your employees that maybe they shouldn't be doing that either. And I think that the last chapter in my book is called Investing in You. And I'm essentially saying that if I've convinced you that there's a good chance you're going to work longer than what you were previously thinking, then there's some things that you might want to do differently with your time and your money, investing not necessarily in traditional investment vehicles, but investing in your sleep, investing in your health, investing in spending more time with friends, having more fun. And I think whether you're a leader or whether you're an employee at a company, that there's really good evidence and data that shows that if you're spending time filling up your own cup, doing these things, bringing enjoyment, fulfillment to your life, and you have great relationships with your spouse and your children and your friends, you might be working less. You might be in the office fewer hours, but the time that you're in the office is going to be more productive. You're going to be more clear. You're going to have less stress. You're going to be more productive. And in a lot of cases, you're going to make more money. It just, I would encourage people to consider maybe like an experiment. Try something for a month and see if you are working an hour less in the office in the name of taking your wife out on a date, or in the name of spending a little bit more time with your kid. See if that doesn't like have you showing up in a different way than maybe you were showing up when it was work that was the priority.
Yeah, I love that focused effort in the office gets more if we decide that we love spending time with our spouse. Hopefully you will buy that extra date, right? or your kids, you'll say, I want more of that. And so I'm going to maybe say no to some time wasters and say yes to more focused effort as well. And I love this idea. Let's dive into this just a minute because it's important. This idea of health, like investing in your health. It's I started reclaiming my health, I guess, about 5 or 6 years ago now. At one time, I was in fantastic shape. Um, Let myself go, got in not so good a shape, and so I started reclaiming it as I'm older. Probably at 49, 50 years old, Derek, and feel really good. I had an injury, but 2 years ago, I was in good enough health. Went on a 2-week hiking trip, hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon with 40 pounds of gear, and camped
Nice.
out, hiked back out. Then I hurt my back, so I was down 3 months. But just talk about how important investing in health, like good food, good work, good, maybe some massage, maybe some coaching in the gym, things like that that help us think even better when it comes to our financial life as well.
Yeah, I think that the best person for anyone to get advice from is the highest and most optimized version of themselves. And the problem is that most people today are stressed, are anxious, they have brain fog, they're not getting enough sleep, they're not taking care of themselves, and they're not qualified to be making big choices for themselves or good choices for themselves about how to get out of a job, about how to make more money, about how to up level the relationship that you have with your family. And one of my favorite stories, and it's something that I really kind of live by and focus on a lot, is the parable of the sower. And so I promise I won't get overly religious here, but there's a story in the Bible called the parable of the sower, where essentially there's a seed, and the seed is synonymous with connection to God. Feel free to call this connection to the highest version of yourself. And there's four different scenarios. The first story: a seed drops down from the sky, lands on pavement, a bird eats it, flies away, nothing happens. The second seed falls down, lands in a crack, starts to sprout, but it can't take root, it dies. Third seed falls down, lands in a thorn bush, takes root, starts to grow, but then gets choked out by the weeds. And the fourth seed falls down and lands in, quote, fertile soil and produces 100-fold what was intended.
Mm.
And a couple of things that I love about this story are, one, it never does what it's supposed to do. Like it never produces the amount that you're expecting. It either doesn't produce anything at all, or it produces an amount beyond your wildest dreams. And number two is it doesn't work the majority of the time. So for me, I'm in the game of soil optimization, and for me that starts with sleep. I've been Oura, I track my sleep. I've had one for 7 or 8 years. And I never, you get a sleep score every day based on a scale from 1 to 100. And I never cracked 80 like the first 5 years I had it. I was having like a glass of wine or two most nights and going to bed a little bit later. And I just said, you know what? I am going to figure out how to wake up and feel amazing in the morning. And I did that. And now most days I'm getting sleep scores in the high 80s to low to mid 90s. And I feel like I've unlocked a new level of a video game. Like the way that I feel now most mornings when I wake up, I didn't know that feeling was on the menu 3 or 4 years ago. I don't think most people realize it. And the reality is, you wake up and you feel great, you're going to make better choices at 9 o'clock in the morning. And those better choices at 9 o'clock in the morning are going to lead to better choices at 11 o'clock. And then those better choices, are going to lead to you probably choosing a salad for lunch instead of a cheeseburger. And then you having a salad for lunch instead of a cheeseburger is going to increase the likelihood that you're not going to skip your workout later in the day. And it just goes on and on and on. And so, one of the things I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to free people up to invest more into themselves, so that the version of them that emerges from that is gonna make much better decisions on behalf of themselves and the people around them than maybe the version that is showing up right now.
Yeah, so good. Love that analogy of the seed, and we have to, even to just be available for good ideas so that we can make better decisions, right? We got to have fertile soil. That means taking care of ourselves. I had a 70 on my sleep score this morning. Derek. It was a bad night. I don't know. Had a really hard leg workout yesterday, and then I was out late because I spoke at a men's event that was late. So I got to bed about an hour later than I normally do. Ate a little bit later than I normally do. It's funny how all those little things impact you, right? Because I'm normally in the 80s, 80 to 85 on my sleep score. Never got to 90, man. If you figure that out, let me know.
Oh, I got to figure it out. I'll tell you. I'll tell you like the main things that work for me and seem to work for a lot of people. No calories within 3 hours of going to bed. Like
Yeah.
I had this habit where like I would have like a glass of wine most nights for like 20 years. And it was easier for me to stop that than it was for me to stop having a little food, even if it was healthy food close to bedtime, because you want your body temperature going down when you're falling asleep. And if you're digesting food, your body temperature is going up. So for me, no calories within 3 hours of going to bed. And I wear a pair of blue blocker glasses to kind of reduce the blue light, but I also started using mouth tape. And a lot of people sleep with their mouths open, which is also, if you snore, it's probably because you're sleeping with your mouth open. And you can wear mouth tape to reinforce nasal breathing. And, we have hundreds of brushes and filters and scrubs in our nasal passageways that clean and filter air as it enters our body to allow our organs to receive it and use it more effectively. And when we mouth breathe, we bypass all of that. And so those are a couple of the things that worked really well for me. I got a 61 sleep score last night, but I have a very good reason for that. I went to a concert with 18 of my friends to see one of my favorite bands. I go to a bunch of concerts. I suggest in my book that I think that we're in the midst of a fun recession right now. I don't think that 99% of adults are coming close to having the amount of fun that they should be having on a regular basis. I think that we just have decided that we need to be productive. We need everything to matter. Even people that sort of initially say, "Yeah, I'll do this," they talk themselves out of it right before they go. I'm going to go to bed late. I've got this meeting tomorrow. I can't do it. And there was a study that came out recently that said that people that go to concerts once every other week, so about 25 a year, which is about what I go to, and people think I'm nuts to go to this many concerts a year. You can increase your lifespan by up to 9 years by seeing live music that frequently. And one of the reasons for that is there's this term called collective effervescence, which represents the conditions that are usually met that allow us to experience the most joy we can feel as a human. And the two primary conditions are: one, you're in a flow state, you forget about where you are, but two, and this one is, I think, the most important one, is that you're sharing a collective combined energy with a lot of other people. When you're around other people who are happy and feeling good, it's producing chemicals in your body that are reducing inflammation, that are increasing your immunity, and just making you feel and perform a lot better. So I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably need to feel like they need to have a good reason to have a good time a little bit more often. And hopefully I just gave them one.
Yeah, well, I think you did me. I hadn't been to a concert in I don't know how long. Maybe I need to try that out.
Yep.
That's good. That's good advice. Didn't know where all this conversation was going to go today, but that's fantastic. All right, let's wrap this. Let's wrap this conversation up. What's the one action you want to challenge our listeners to take after today's conversation?
I would love for people just to kind of, if they've already opted into this idea of retirement, they're currently saving for retirement, they're buying into it, just to pause and reflect on how much time and thought they gave to the inputs for their plan. Most people, when they meet with a financial advisor, they go to an online calculator, they're answering questions that they haven't given a lot of thought to. They're answering questions like, what is the inflation rate going to be for the next 30 years? What are the tax rates going to be for the next 30 years? What kind of rate of return am I going to get on my investments while I'm working? And what kind of return am I going to get on my investments after I stop working? And then, oh, by the way, what year am I going to die? And most people are going to spend 15 to 20 minutes answering these questions. They're going to be wrong about every single one. The likelihood of them being right about them is sort of akin to getting like an 18 parlay on FanDuel, right? Like your odds are just insurmountable. It's not going to happen, but they get this number, they get this output, and they start living their life in service to fulfilling this number, saving this number. They're sacrificing time and energy with all of the things that I think are more important to them. And look, I'm really, there's a lot in my book that I think can be for a lot of people. Um, but I'm really trying to reach people like in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, the people that haven't given a lot of thought to it yet, that are probably going to one day arrive at 65 if they don't stop and think about what they're doing, and they're going to have a lot of regrets. And hopefully, by listening to this conversation today, by reading more about what I have to say about it in my book, they'll do things differently so that they'll have a much more fulfilled life and have far fewer regrets when they finally get to that age.
Yeah, I love that advice. Look, what I'm hearing from Derek and what challenged me the first time I met him was, we get conditioned to think a certain way, right? It's not that it's wrong. It's just times change, things change, and Derek challenges us to think a different way, right? He's challenged us to think about how we think, not what to think, necessarily, as it relates to retirement. So I hope that you've heard something new today from Derek. And I want to challenge you, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing Derek's book right now, Let's Retire Retirement. If you're listening on our podcast platform, go grab a copy of Derek's book, Let's Retire Retirement. Derek, tell us where we can get a copy of your book and how
Yeah, I'd
we
love
can
for
find out
people
more.
to go to my website, derekcoburn.com. We'll have the links to all the various providers of my book. But I also have been writing a lot more. I've been adding on to it. I've been getting new information and new research. I've got a calculator on my website that you can personalize your Tale of Two Tonys, enter in your income, enter in your current savings to see what impact it would have on you by deciding to maybe work a little bit longer. And, I'm just looking to, I've been blessed, the sale of my firm has put me in a position where I feel like I can give back, and it feels good to be at a place where I feel like I'm one of the more qualified people to be leading this conversation, to be sharing insights on this, because I've been talking about it with my clients for so long, and now I wrote a book about it. So I'm really looking just to grow my community and grow the reach that I have to be able to hopefully inspire people to live life more fully right now and not just save it up for later.
It's awesome. So derekcoburn.com, visit his website. Hey, one more question for you before we wrap up. Talk to us about your community, the cadre community, and what that's all about, and who do you like to attract into that community as well?
Yeah, so my wife and I started Cadre together in 2011, and we're coming up on 15 years now, and it's a community for CEOs and entrepreneurs where we host, virtual gatherings and in-person events, and just try to find ways to connect really great leaders with other great people and with other great ideas to have big effects on their businesses and their lives. And I'll tell you, just because I think this might be useful with some of what we were talking about before. I started Cadre because my wealth management practice had grown, and I found myself with a lot of clients that I didn't necessarily love working with. I had about 300 clients, and for anybody out there that has something they're doing now and they don't love what they're doing, or maybe they can kind of hone it in a little bit to make it so that they're just spending more of their time doing the things that they really enjoy doing. And for me, that was, who are the clients that I really want to be spending time with? I knocked it down to 75, like the good old 80-20 rule. And then I used that extra time to start Cadre. And what that did, having two gigs going side by side at the same time, let's say you're in a job right now and you want to pivot out eventually, maybe you want to start your own thing. I would not advise just stopping cold turkey and starting this new thing. I would advise trying to create a little space. Maybe you pick up one client, two clients, because having two businesses running side by side at the same time has a tremendous ancillary benefit. And that is, you can really stick to your guns in terms of who's an ideal client and who is this person that I really want to be working with, in a way that I don't think I would be able to do if I was relying on just one business to pay my bills. And one of the reasons why we've been able to curate such a high caliber of member without really compromising that for such a long time is the wealth management business was paying my bills. I didn't need anyone's $500 a month to fund my kids' college education plan by being in Cadre. So if somebody was showing up and they had a big ego, or they weren't going to participate and they weren't going to lean into it, I didn't have to, I would just say this, I don't think this is going to be for you. So I've always been blessed just because I have these two businesses to be able to really work with people that I love working with, because I play one business off the other to allow myself to do that.
That's good. That's good. Well, hey, Derek, I'm glad I got to meet you. I can't
Yeah,
wait to
man.
dive into your book a little bit more and learn what I need to learn for my own self. But thanks for coming on and sharing with our audience. Hopefully, our listeners will pick up a copy of your book, learn the things they need to learn. Hopefully, feel what I felt the first time I heard you talk about this, is just some pressure off my back, right?
Yep.
It give me a little bit more runway, a little bit more freedom to kind of think freer about my current state that I'm in. We'll make sure that we put a link to Derek's website in the show notes. So if you're listening or watching, make sure you check out the show notes so you can find out more about Derek. Derek, thanks for joining us on the Lead Up Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. This was fun. Appreciate it.